Thank you to the voice who introduces me every week. Radio Red in the house. Those of you watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, hello. I want my guests to wave furiously at our audiences. And those of you listening on the Voice America Empowerment Channel, hello. We're waving virtually to say hello to you. I was going to point out my new background. Those of you who are watching, I don't use Midjourney. I use something called Night Cafe Studio. You can find it. It's a free, yes, AI art app. And I created this background with red lipstick and red and pink bubbles and some nice curly stuff and a gray silver background and a red microphone. And then I went into Photoshop and added Read My with the lips. I love those cool conversations with creators with my name. So I'm very happy with the new background. So here we are. It is Monday again. Oh my goodness gracious. Let's see what time of the year it is. June 3rd. Welcome to June. This is the 154th day of 2024 in the Gregorian calendar, 221 days left. It's still time to get champagne or wine or get a recipe for punch for New Year's. We're not ready yet. 23rd Monday. My guests are Marjorie Hope today and Mike Hassel, and I want you both, before you say a word, put up your hand in the shape of the letter L, and we're going to do this on the count of three. Please follow along with me. We're going to say hello, L, L, L. Marjorie, hand up. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hello,
Hello.
L,
L.
L,
L.
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 Michael, my engineer, Michael Jordan used to keep track of the best in sync LLL. I think these two guests are right there in the top three. Could you please make a note, Michael, at Voice America? Thank you. I appreciate that. That was wonderful, Marjorie and Mike. I'm very, very impressed since we didn't really rehearse this. So here we are. LLL is lovely, lanky Laura Legs, our most loyal listener. She's been a friend of mine for God, at least 15 years. We used to dance, take a dance class and go to ballroom dances in on Long Island. And the problem is that she lives in Whitestone and it doesn't start with L. So, Mike, I took up a fake GoFundMe a while ago to raise money to move her to London because it starts with L. But Marjorie, London was too hot and too expensive. So I gave her a list of all the L major cities in the United States and she didn't like any. And then I was looking at the map about 2 years ago and I wanted to move to London. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I tilted my head. Mike, I have this bad habit of tilting my head when I look at the map. And the first N in London went upside down. Yeah, I really tilted my head a lot and it turned into a U. And I ended up moving to Loudon, Tennessee.
Wow.
Huh.
Wow, so here I am. So I'm trying to get Laura to move here because it would be lovely, lanky Laura Legs, our most loyal listener in Loudon. And I think that would go very well. So what Laura's going to do at 6:01 p.m., I will receive an email from her and she will tell me how much she enjoyed both of you. And she will tell me what you said on the show. She'll take a little from the promo that went out today, and she will take a little bit from what she heard on the show and send me a little report. And she'll call me, hello, beautiful, gorgeous lady of red. That's what she calls me.
Wow.
So there we go. So welcome everybody to Read My Lips. This is my fun Monday night party. It's a round table. We're not doing interviews. We're not talking politics. Everybody is. We're not doing that here. We're talking about creativity. What motivates, what inspires my guests? What are we all thinking about? What makes us want to paint or write or create a business or write a poem or something like that? What is it that gets into our heads and our hearts that makes us want to do something that maybe has never been done before, or that we've never done before, or that we really enjoy doing that's different from everybody else? That's what creativity is all about. So now we would like to find out who the two of you really are. I'm so happy to have you here. And I met both of you at the National Publicity Summit. I've been a media guest for, I think, about 50 years. No, it wasn't around 50 years ago. About 12 or 15 years, I used to attend in person when it was at the Hotel Penn across from Penn Station in New York. And I would book 50 people in 2.5 hours. Now I do it
Wow.
virtually 3 or 4 times a year, and I get to meet lovely people like you. And you are on the clock at 2 minutes on the dot. And in that time, what do I have to do, Mike? I have to listen to your pitch. I have to tell you whether I'm interested. I have to ask you quickly for your email and your phone number, and I write it in a calendar. I offer you a date. And that's it. I barely squeak in at 2 minutes each, and I booked 38 people this time. So there you go.
Wow.
So let's go. Marjorie, we'd love to hear who you are. Tell us your origin story. Where do you get your creativity from? I'm putting you on speaker view and officially welcome to Read My Lips, Marjorie Hope.
So, hi, I'm Marjorie Hope, and I am the author of 2 books, Connect Diplomacy and Carries Gold. Now, you might say, what does that have to do with each other? But they're both connecting people which is where my creativity comes from because I feel the world changes every day. We're not the same people, the world's not the same. And a lot of people become fearful of change when change is the absolute best thing in our life so that we can be creative because we are natural creative people and human beings. And so my books talk about connecting with people, one through the world, where we actually use our differences to connect with each other. One is a gymnastic children's book, Connecting Through the Olympics, which is about connecting with the world. So it's basically we have one Earth, one planet, we all live on it, and that is our only choice right now. So we better learn to connect with each other and be creative.
Thank you, Marjorie. I want to know about you. Where do you come from? What's your education? How did you get into this? What motivated you? Well, give me the Marjorie story. We love the story about the connection. Yes, I agree with everything you said. Very, very well put, very articulate, and very compelling. Tell me who you are, Marjorie.
I grew up in Maryland. I was a gymnast, and then I went away to college to Salisbury University, which is also in Maryland. And then I moved to Florida, which is very hot. But when I moved here, I also realized that what I wanted to do was to work with people around the world. I did a lot of traveling. And every time I would travel somewhere, I was taking groups of people around the world to connect through yoga, which is the oldest and first form of movement. And what I've found in every single country is that people are people. And that is exactly how my personality came out with what I'm doing, because I realize that most people don't understand that. We are all different, but we all need to respect each other. And so I really, really have found the passion for that. I did some courses with our Harvard University and also London School of Economics in this, and found that the more we connect with each other and connect with our world, the more we actually learn about ourselves, each other, and that's where my passion came from. It's from the more you travel, which I would advise for everybody to do, the more you meet people and what the world is really all about.
Thank you, Marjorie. Pleasure to get to know you. Mike Hassel,
Thank
you're
you. And thank you
next.
for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. Mike, talk to us. Who is the real Mike Hassel? Tell us, what's your origin story? Where'd you start? What are you doing?
Well, I was born in a little town in West Tennessee, and I grew up in Nashville. I had an uncle. I'm from a family of engineers, farm mechanics, car mechanics, things like that. One of them got educated at University of Tennessee and ended up on the team at IBM that invented the barcode scanners for retail outlets. So I basically wanted to be Bill Steele, and I went to Georgia Tech. And about 2 years into getting a degree in electrical engineering, I thought I was being trained for a profession rather than being educated more broadly because I'm basically curious about everything: music, art, humanities, etc. But I couldn't study it at Georgia Tech. So I did some work on the role of humanities in technical education that was unlike anybody in the country, I suppose, because that's what got me into Harvard Business School. I had an interest in both sides of the coin here. And so I started my career at Procter & Gamble, Crisco Oil, marketing. Had nothing to do with electrical engineering. Met my wife there. We moved off to Boston. And so then I ended up in an entrepreneurial career. And I had an aha moment at age 40, working on audio tapes on the great ideas of history. And this was a series on moral problems of our age and things like euthanasia and, terrorism, things like that. And I realized these are not problems like I understand a problem to be as an engineer. They can't be solved. There's no equation. There's no algorithm. There's no structured decision-making process. So most really the latter half of my life has been spent in entrepreneurialism and thinking about this balance of values that goes into moral conflicts. That was my conclusion, that there's not an answer, there is a struggle between two separately true things. And so this is kind of the way I see the world. It's the basis of a book that I wrote, published last year, called Deep Trade-Offs. And I find a lot of creativity in that because, one way of understanding something is to look for its opposite, and to see the conflict between them. People will ask, what's the difference between Marjorie and Radio Red? And, a complimentary question is, what's the similarities between them? So, I have a little passage in one of my books about the similarities between gasoline and white wine. They're pretty extensive, but you never think of them unless you're just asking the question. It's easy to talk about their differences, but everything has differences and similarities. And so that kind of symmetry, that parallelism is one of the engines of creativity for me.
Very, very interesting. I'm impressed with both of you. I feel like I've got a very intellectual panel here today. I just want to tell both of you a little bit about my background. Some of my listeners and viewers may not know. I'm considered an early woman in tech. I was a mainframe programmer analyst back in the day, coding
Wow.
in COBOL. Keep punching my code, Mike, and I was working on a Xerox Sigma 6 CP5 mainframe. I got 2 degrees, one in operations and one in programming. And I took over a reporting system for, what was it, for the community college division of the entire state of Oregon after 2 years. That was my first job ever in my late 20s. I was very protected growing up. Anyway, it was a fascinating time because everything was very hands-on. And I was asked to be a contract programmer for myself, Marjorie. So I had this was in Eugene, Oregon. And I had a contractor named Alan, I don't remember his last name, it was a little while ago, who would call me up and say, okay, take out a piece of paper and a ruler, draw a line across the top, draw a line down the side. These are the columns on the top, these are the rows on the side, and you're going to program this report. That's how the specs were given. I still have green bar paper with my notes on it, Mike, with my handwritten notes. And eventually we graduated to a terminal where we could input the code on a terminal. And then I went to coding in PL1 on another mainframe language on an IBM 4341. And I coded programming for the secondary schools in the whole state of Oregon at that point. And then I came back to my good old native New York and accidentally got into marketing and accidentally got into radio and accidentally got into writing English. I said, wow, I know how to write code. Can I write English too? And the answer is yes, and I can talk it pretty good too. So I think I'm on my ninth journey, but I just want to share that with you because I think you could both appreciate the journey, if you will. I know that's an overused word today about where we've all come from. And
Yeah.
Mike, I will tell you that people say, oh, there's nothing creative about programming. You're just putting, you're using the syntax of whatever language. It's amazingly creative because we start with a blank page, like the tabula rasa that we are, our brains. We come out,
Yes,
hopefully we don't know,
yes.
we don't know what's exactly in there, nature, nurture, regression, whatever. But you start with a blank piece of paper, and the goal is to get to what the report's supposed to look like. And you create, you decide.
There was a short time I was president of the Slingerland Drum Company, a division of Gibson Guitar here in Nashville. It's one of my
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial ventures. Some of our best customers were doctors and lawyers and engineers because they were kind of rutted in their career and they wanted to get out of that rut. And so they had a lot of money. They would buy lots of drums and guitars,
Mm-hmm.
and they're terrific people itching to do not only numbers but words and
Yep.
music as well.
Yep. Very, very interesting. Somebody's doing a webinar about Gibson. I put it down into my calendar. I saw it online somewhere, something, and I signed up for it. So thank you very much. By the way, I'm a drummer too, part-time drummer.
Wow.
Red sticks, red drums, red boots. What can I tell you, kids? And the rest is history. There we go. So what I like to do now is see, I told you it was a party, right? You can go do interviews anywhere. You come to my show, it's a party. We just talk, we share ideas. So, Marjorie, first, I have asked each of you to pick a quote from a fictional character in a movie or a TV show or a song lyric. You've already sent me, and I've done some research on it. And I want you to relate the quote. I'll read the quote in the background, and I want you to relate it to your own creativity. And let's talk about thinking outside the box and doing things that you've never done before. What makes you happy? What makes you glow? So Margie can I call you Margie? Because in your promo you sent me more. You want to be Marjorie. Who would you like to be?
Well, whatever you like. My real name is Marjorie Hope, which
Well,
most people don't realize. Margie is just my nickname.
we'll stick with Marjorie then. Okay, so
Okay.
this is the line from Ferris Bueller, played, of course, the title character by Matthew Broderick. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986 teen comedy film. Was it really that long ago, Marjorie? 24 and 14, 38 years ago? Impossible. Let's see. He's a high school slacker who skips school for one day in Chicago, takes along his friends, played by Mia Sara and Alan Ruck, and he breaks the fourth wall, talking to the audience about his techniques and his inner thoughts. Interestingly enough, John Hughes, who wrote, co-produced, and directed it, wrote the screenplay in less than 1 week. Mike, talk about creativity, right? This is his love letter to Chicago. The movie includes the then Sears Tower, Wrigley Field, Art Institute of Chicago. And he said, I wanted to capture as much of Chicago as I could, not just the architecture and landscape, but also the spirit. It was one of the top grossing films of 1986. It grossed 70.1 million on a 5.8 million budget. Wouldn't you have loved to
Wow.
have been an angel on that project? In 2014, the film was selected. It took a long time for preservation in the film registry. Here's the quote. We all love this one. Here we go, Marjorie. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. I said it the way I say it. I don't know how Farrah said it. Marjorie, I'm putting you on speaker view. Tell us what this has to do with your creativity, please. Go ahead.
Well, I think when I was in college, I had a lot of anxiety as to what was I going to do the rest of my life. And I had a college professor say, he goes, we're like the Renaissance man. We don't have to be one thing for the rest of our life. The Renaissance man would be a farmer, a doctor, a teacher. And I started thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to just pick one thing. And so, I was married, I had children, I had a gymnastics school, I had, my yeah, and my America Connected, which is a international nonprofit. So I love the creativity in that quote, because also if you go to and visit where the movie was filmed, and you can see the different, places that he went to, you realize the creativity in everyday life. But here's the thing, we can find creativity in everything we do and anything we do. So you can walk outside, walk down a sidewalk, and that can be creative because you notice chalk paintings that a child might have made, or maybe you see a bug that got squished. I know that sounds gross, but that's creativity. So yeah, so that's why I like it, because it's something that doesn't box you in. It's saying go out into the world and do everything you want to do.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. That's interesting. In this part of Tennessee, Mike, you'll get a kick out of this because I'm near Knoxville. You mentioned you
Right.
grew up near Nashville. Loudon is Loudon County, right outside of Farragut and Lenore City and Knoxville. We just finished Cicada-geddon. We were lucky to have the double brood emerge at the same time. The first
We
time
have
in
it in Nashville.
do you?
Yeah. Yes.
217 years. And it just finished a couple of days ago. And one of my
Wow.
neighbors came over with a broom and he swept 50 dead cicadas off my porch. They were attaching themselves to people. My lawn mowing service told me they were in their hair, they were on their mowers. Any
Oh my.
plant, they were hitting my window in my office. I mean, banging against the window. They were going up and down the drain pipe. If you have plants on the porch or the deck, they were attaching themselves to the underside of the leaves. Somebody I know told me one flew into her mouth.
Ugh.
And the noise, the mating call of the males was a shrill all day long. Shrill, shrill. It sounded like a siren was going off somewhere. I can hear the birds chirping now. It's quiet outside and it's nice. So you mentioned bugs, squishing bugs. Marty, that reminded me. Okay, thank you for the quote. We love that quote. Appreciate that. Mike Hassel has picked a quote from Fred Galley, played by John Payne. This goes way back before any of us were born. I could swear to that. The movie is Miracle on 34th Street, 1947 Christmas comedy drama film. It was initially released in the UK, Mike, as The Big Heart. That was the original name, 20th
Oh,
Century Fox. It was based on a story by somebody named Valentine Davies, Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, Natalie Wood. Oh, she was alive then. And Edmund Gwen. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas in New York City, it was about the effect of a department store Santa Claus who claimed to be the real Santa, became a Christmas favorite. Old man Chris Kringle complained to the event director, Doris Walker at Macy's, Santa was drunk. She said, gee, you look like Santa. Why don't you play Santa? And they hired him. Yeah, and then they gave him a psychological test, and he said, I'm not playing Santa. I am Santa. And they tried to have him committed. We'll leave that one alone. So here's the quote said by Fred Galley. Look, Doris, someday you're going to find that your way of facing this realistic world just doesn't work. And when you do, don't overlook those lovely intangibles. You'll discover those are the only things that are worthwhile. Mike, how did you find this quote? Seriously, that must have been, it's a treasure. Where did you find it? Talk to me.
There's this group of about 4 or 5 movies we watch at Christmas every year. And so we had just pulled that one out. And every time I see it, it reminds me of this tension between imagination and fact. as I said, I'm trained as an engineer. I'm from family of engineers, and we want to understand and, get evidence and all of that kind of stuff. But as my aha moment advised me, taught me, that's not really what's most important. It's love, forgiveness, hope, all of these things that are intangibles are really where we live and what brings meaning to our lives. And so if you look to the science to deliver that for you, you're going to be looking a long time. And every time I hear that quote, it reminds me, Susan and I are religiously active. And so I get a heavy dose of this there to think about the things for which there is no evidence. And it reframes, even in COVID, people were saying, what does the science say? Well, there's a role for science, and there's a time to ignore the science. And in relational things, science doesn't really get as much.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you both for picking such thoughtful quotes. I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you very much, Red. Marjorie Hope, I'm looking at your creativity statement number 1. I'm going to read it for you. You don't have to find it. Make it easy for you. And then I'd like you to take about 3 minutes and expand it. Take your time with it. And Mike Castle, if you have anything to say to add to what Marjorie says, just give me a thumbs up or a wave or something. You can raise any of the fingers on your hands, just not the middle one. I don't respond to that. This is a nice show. Okay. By the way, I'm the green room warm-up comedian. It's a low budget show. Just want you to know. This is as good as it gets. So Marjorie Hope says, I believe creativity is not just about artistic expression, but also about problem solving, empathy, and adaptability. It's about challenging the status quo, pushing boundaries, and finding novel ways to navigate the complexities of our world. Okay, I aim to contribute to a more inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous global community. Okay, let's get away from the diplomacy and all of that and talk about your creativity. What do you do? What do you do in your spare time, Marjorie? What makes you happy? How do you create? Talk to me.
It's funny you asked that because I just had this conversation the other day with someone, and they were telling me how bored they were. I said, I'm never, ever bored. At night when I'm getting ready for bed, I have like a little deck outside my bedroom, and I go out and I look at the stars and the moon, and I see planets, and it's amazing. And I also play this game like, look what the clouds and the moon brought me tonight. And I take pictures with my phone, and it's so extraordinary and so creative as far as our world. And then, I have a lot of hobbies. So I work out every day. I collect dolls. I love everything I do in my life. I love my work. I love my children. I love my pets. So it's more faith over fear. That's how I do my life. And if I stopped, and you think about this, when a child is like 1 or 2 years old and they're learning how to walk, they don't say to themselves, I'm going to fall, I'm going to stumble. They just get up and try again. And I guess I didn't get the memo because I just get up and keep trying, and I just have fun with it. That would be my answer. I just have fun with it.
I love that. Mike, I think wants to say something, but Marjorie, what kind of dolls do you collect?
I collect all sorts of dolls. I have a collection of very old antique dolls that were my grandmother's. I collect Amish dolls. I have a whole schoolhouse setting. I collect big baby dolls, Barbie dolls. So I have lots of collections, and my house isn't big enough for all my collections. So unfortunately, some of them are in my closet, but
Thank you. That's
I
interesting.
love it.
Did you ever hear of a Ginny doll? I had a Ginny doll, not a Barbie doll when I was
I have
growing
heard
up.
of that. Yes.
Yeah, she was a little blonde doll and her parts moved. And all I know is I used to make ponytails out of her long hair. And I don't know if I had Barbies or not, but Ginny doll with a G. Thank you very much. Interesting. Mike, any comments before I read one of yours? What do you think?
Yes, I love this way of thinking. And 3 things come to mind. One is when my daughter was 5 or 6, she came to me one day and said, I'm bored. And I said, well, to me, that tells me you're boring.
I've heard that.
Because
I've heard that.
what I'm hearing from Marjorie is it's about attention and interest, and
Right.
you can be thrilled all the time if you have enough
Right.
interest in what's going on. My son is a musician, and I took him to a songwriters festival here one time, and they were interviewing a songwriter about writer's block, and said, what do you do? And she said, I go out and live more life.
Right.
Basically, just go pay attention to what's going on. And there's a bunch of stories about how songs are written by just somebody who hears a turn of phrase. And the third thing that comes to mind is when I was in this publishing business on the great ideas of history that I alluded to earlier, we did a series on science, and one of them was about complexity and chaos. And the author made the point that life thrives on the border between stability and disturbance. We need enough disturbance, enough change to be exciting. We need enough stability to not come unglued. And I think there's math behind this, that life thrives best when there's not too much of either.
Very interesting. Thank you. I like to have my guests spark ideas in each other, and that's why we do the roundtable format. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read one of Mike's statements now, and let's see where it takes us. Mike, this is statement number 2 you sent. You say, beyond the rare and enormously gratifying aha moments, my creativity thrives more typically in puzzlement. After I've said, that's funny. Okay, Mike, you got to unpack that for us, please. What do you mean?
Well, I gave one example where I was thinking about moral problems and really struggling with them. I didn't have the tools to resolve them. What's the science that's going to give me the answer so I can persuade other people what the right answer is? It's not available. It's the aha moment for me, that's funny was that's not a problem as I understand it. I need to rethink what we mean by a problem. And so, if you ever see that legalese that says, do not fold, spindle, mutilate, these all these versions of the same word that they're trying to eliminate ambiguity. There's all kinds of ambiguity in language, and we may rethink, what is creativity? What is a microphone? What is a Marjorie? Right? And that's funny, basically, are moments where we have to reevaluate what we've already come to believe. And one of the great truths I've discovered in this whole business of symmetry and value conflict is that convictions are our enemies. They're the things that tell us the way things are, and they close our minds to the way things may be that we haven't thought about.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Looking at things from another angle. Marjorie, go ahead, please join us.
Yeah, I love that, what you just said, Mike. And one of the things I found is movement. So when you come to that situation where you're like, gosh, I don't know the answer, or I'm feeling anxious, or what am I going to do? I know it sounds funny, but any kind of movement, whether it just be twirling in your room, maybe you don't want to twirl, but walking, jumping, any kind of movement. And what it does is it creates your brain and the brain cells to kind of regenerate, and the answer will come out. And it's sometimes if you just have even just a hot cup of tea, coffee, hot beverage, and you do 3 deep breaths in and out, inhale and exhale, it's the same thing as movement. You're moving around those brain cells and the answer will just pop out. It's really cool.
Interesting. Did either one of you ever have the experience of trying to solve a math problem or a science problem when you were in school, junior high school? We used to call it junior high. Now it's middle school or high school. And it came to you in the middle of the night. Did you ever have that? Because I did many times. And I think I kept a pencil and a pad of paper next to my bed because I would solve a math problem while I was sleeping. Mike, did you ever have that experience?
It happens to me still, and it's usually
Yeah,
not
me too.
math because I'm not doing math, but I'll be thinking about something, and the next morning I'll wake up with 2 or 3 ideas about what to do about it.
Isn't that interesting? So that
Yeah.
we're always working and thinking. I assume you're both type A like I am. Am I
Yes.
correct in that?
I have a
I think
sixth
so.
sense too about things. So things pop into my head that are things that will happen after I've already thought about it. So it's kind of interesting.
I've been having experiences recently where I'll wake up with a thought about, or I'll go to sleep with something that's troubling me. And I'll say if something is going to happen in the next
Right.
day, in the next 24
Right.
hours with a certain person or with a certain scenario. But I've been wrong about the details, but right about the person it's attached to. Isn't that funny?
That's right.
Something happened and I said, this person is going to be talking to that person or that. I had the gender right, but the wrong person. I knew something was not going to happen that was positive for me, but it was with the same people, but it was something else the same day. And this
We
has happened twice. What do you think, Marjorie? Very strange. Marjorie froze.
all
Oh, there
we
you
all
are.
have
Okay.
that. And it doesn't consciously make sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I want to go to one of Mike. Thanks for that statement. I want to go to one of your statements, Marjorie. I think you just alluded to it, but I'd like you to go in a little more. You say during my downtime, I engage in physical activities each day. My one a day: weightlifting, yoga, Pilates, swimming, cardio. I believe movement, which you already said, serves as a
Right.
reset. So, as a former gymnast, I strongly advocate the connection between a healthy mind and a body, referring to the practice as the reset. I indulge in clouding and you put it all capital letters and capture breathtaking pictures of the sky, a significant hobby. Can you just give us a little more detail? I think you already covered it a little bit, Marjorie, but I was fascinated by that. Go ahead.
About clouding or in general?
Reset and clouding, both of them.
Oh, okay. So a lot of times people don't understand the concept of reset, but what we do throughout our day can be complex. It can be overstimulating. It can be anxiety ridden. And what you have to do is think back to when you were a child. You had that reset all day long. You went to recess. You played with your friends. You ran home. You or walked to school. But you had activities. There was always something active you were doing. Our brain has to reset through play. And play is something that's like a dirty word as an adult, but it's think back to it. What day did someone say to you is your last day to play? Because we all played as children. It never has to stop. It might change the form of play. You may not do mud pies like you did when you were 3 years old, but you still need, as an adult, to play. And that play is what resets us in our life every single day.
I like that. Mike, what do you think about resetting? Do you do that in any form?
Well, the elephant in the room for what I think we've been talking about for a few minutes is the subconscious, and so I think a lot of the processes we're talking about are things that are going on that we're not aware of. There's just this
Right.
fantastic book called Thinking Fast and Slow by an
Mm.
economist who just died about a month ago, Robert Kahneman. He's Nobel Prize winning, but it's about the anatomy of the brain, the forebrain that thinks and the base brain that intuits, and it's just fantastic. It's been compared to The Wealth of Nations, for what that was for economics by Adam Smith. This is for psychology. There's another psychologist that I just love named Haidt, Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, and he has a metaphor for this. He said the subconscious and the forebrain is like an elephant with a rider, and
Mm.
the elephant is the subconscious, and the rider can direct it to go sometimes here or there, but pretty much subconscious is going to go where it wants, and it's about 80% of our mental activity. So, resetting and breathing and physical activity, I think, are all ways of influencing our subconscious.
Well put. Mike, do you have hobbies? What do you do when you're not thinking at a very high, cogent intellectual level? Paint, you draw, do you sing, do you dance?
I play piano. I studied piano for 10
Oh,
years.
Tell us a little bit about that, please.
So, I studied with a neighborhood teacher for a while. My mother loved Rhapsody in Blue, and I was bored. I wanted to play pop songs like Let It Be, what I was hearing on the radio. Did that for a couple of years, got bored with that. And my mom said, why don't you play Rhapsody in Blue? So I got a reduction of it, and 4-page reduction. I learned it in about 2 weeks. And so my teacher and I decided to get the real thing. And I studied that for 6 months and played it. So after that, I spent 2 years at Vanderbilt's School of Music, basically,
oh, wow.
and played Chopin and Beethoven and Rachmaninoff and things like that, and Scott Joplin. And I'm a little bit out of practice, but I have a really nice piano, and if I were to practice more, I could play it really well.
I'm impressed. That's a very complex piece of music, isn't it? Rhapsody in Blue.
Yes.
Beautiful. Wow. Have you recorded yourself playing it when you were doing it years ago, I guess?
I don't recall any recordings of myself playing. I probably should do that. Claire de Lune is the one I play the best that would be recordable at this point.
Why not? Thank you. I threw that at you because it wasn't in your notes to me and I wanted to know. I do have one of your statements you sent me, Mike. So let's go to statement number 3. You say
Okay.
the urge to get it right, I'm putting the air quotes around it, never ends, as there is always something new to wonder and cogitate about, some newly apparent tension to balance. Interesting. Talk to me about how that leads to your creativity, Mike.
Well, as I mentioned, I have begun to see things in terms of symmetry. The thing that I focus on in writing about it is how we learn to respect other people that have a different value that is in competition with the one we share. It's not that they hate what we love. It's that they have a different priority and a different experience. And I think if we were more sensitive to that, we could get along a lot better by understanding where people are coming from. So a lot of that is being alive to new definitions, new understandings. I may be talking about a leg in the way somebody else means a different part of the leg. There's that famous Indian metaphor about the guys trying to describe the elephant. One describes the trunk, one describes the rear leg, one describes the tail, one describes the tusk. They all think they're describing the elephant, but they don't realize they're just talking about different parts of a bigger truth. So the quote that the statement that you read really is my way of saying that, keep looking for what part of the picture is beyond my frame that I just haven't realized yet, that maybe somebody else understands better, and I should agree more with them, and vice versa.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Not least, thank you for turning me on. I stole that line. Wave goodbye to Read My Lips audience. Michael, my engineer, tell us when we're out, and I will stick around with my guests.